Rivals. From classic literature all the way to modern anime, every great story is built on conflict. But rivals are what give that conflict a face. Because when you hear the term, the question isn't whether you know one, it's which one comes to mind first. Kentaro Miura, Masashi Kishimoto, Akira Toriyama. It's no coincidence that some of the most influential storytellers rely on the exact same dynamic, because it always comes back to the same thing. Rivals are so much more than just another antagonist. They are the antithesis, the embodiment of everything the protagonist rejects or desperately wants to become. Not just another obstacle in the story, but the living, breathing form of a deeply human struggle. And unlike a simple villain, they don't just oppose, they mirror, because a rival is the story's central problem, the first tangible look at what the protagonist is truly up against, revealing what would otherwise remain hidden by forcing two similar characters down completely different paths. Which is why, when done right, the rival doesn't just challenge the protagonist. They expose their flaws, their fears, and the terrifying possibility that someone else might surpass them. A rival is the person who proves you aren't as special as you thought you were. They embody the viewer's desire for constant improvement, competition, and growth, taking fights to a whole nother level. Not just flashy choreography, but something else entirely. A clash of beliefs, a collision of worldviews, a war of ideals. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. With a trope as old as humanity, there is so much more to explore. Some of the earliest stories ever told aren't about heroes and villains, but about brothers. About the moment two people can no longer be seen separately, not as individuals, but as two sides of the same coin. And the version that shows this clearest is the ambitious one. The ambitious rival isn't just an antagonist. They become the person everything circles around, the literal engine dragging the entire story forward. Think of Griffith, Johan, or Light. They dictate the pace of the story even when they aren't on screen. Now, it doesn't always have to go to that extreme. A rival can still force the plot to evolve without being the absolute sun in the solar system. But more than what they do to the plot, it's about what they do to the protagonist. Because a rival is what makes the protagonist fully human. Think about it like this. Where can you see the blue square most clearly? For the sickos of you out there, you might have chosen option C. But seriously, orange is the color that makes blue pop the most. In color theory, this is what's called complementary color. And in writing, this is what's called a foil. A character that exists specifically to highlight another character's traits, making them shine even more. Tenma's kindness only carries weight because of Johan's nihilism. Guts' raw bleeding humanity amplifies Griffith's cold, elegant ego, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Sasuke's paralysis versus Naruto's grit. In the Forest of Death. Aki's stoicism versus Denji's chaos. Sora's light versus Riku's shade. These characters define one another. Quote, in order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. It's Guts' departure that finally exposes Griffith's flawed nature. It's Obito's resolve that forces Kakashi to choose his comrades over the mission. And it's Lelouch's rebellion that shatters Suzaku's idealism. Each character forces the other to act, to change, and to reveal who they truly are underneath the mask. But instead of asking who does this best, let's look at where it all started. Chances are you've heard of them before, but for those who haven't, Cain and Abel are the sons of Adam and Eve, and as they grow older, both bring offerings. Abel brings the best of what he has, and his offering is accepted. Cain's is not. There's no explanation, just a difference that can't be ignored. At some point, Cain speaks to his brother, and when they are alone in the field, he kills him. Because to Cain, Abel isn't just his brother anymore. He becomes a standard, and once someone becomes your standard, you stop seeing yourself on your own. Everything you do starts to revolve around comparison, around being better. It starts to feel like there's only one position, one place that actually matters. Then the decision becomes simple. It's either him or you. And from that brutal truth, 3 distinct maladies are born. When we are first introduced to Sasuke, he is the definition of him, and to the audience, he's Naruto's biggest obstacle. Their difference is night and day. See what I did there? Not just in ability, but in position. Naruto starts off ignored, seen as a failure, having to fight to be seen, while for Sasuke, it's the exact opposite. He's respected, talented, glazed by everyone who comes his way. His fight lies in staying that person. This might seem trivial, but it's far from it, because while Naruto is trying to climb up, Sasuke is trying not to fall down. And from the reader's perspective, the more Naruto catches up, the more Sasuke feels like a person. Because he stops being just the guy who has it all, we start to see something else. The part of him that doesn't want to be surpassed, that fears falling behind, that can't look down on Naruto anymore. The part that envies him. But Sasuke's rivalry with Naruto isn't really about Naruto. Stay with me for a second. Graduated from the academy at age 7, became a Chunin at 10, and was named Amu Black Ops captain by 13, said to have the intellect of a Hokage, truly a once-in-a-decade genius. From Sasuke's perspective, Itachi is perfection, respected by their father, everything Sasuke isn't yet. And from the very beginning, he's compared to him by his teachers, his comrades, but most importantly, his father. Itachi becomes the standard Sasuke has to constantly fight against, and he believes that the moment he reaches that level, he will finally be seen the same way. You see it in his training up until the massacre. Quote, "I can't mess up," says it all. To Sasuke, this isn't just about getting stronger, it's about proving his worth, to get the necessary validation and acceptance that his father denied from him. I wonder what father really thinks of Itachi and me. The other day, father said, "That's my boy." That's what father always says to Itachi, so I was really happy. But father and Itachi aren't getting along lately, so maybe I'm just a substitute for Itachi. Even then, like Abel, Itachi seemingly becomes the source of Sasuke's suffering. Not because he hates him, but because he feels like he's being replaced. That's where his envy is rooted in, an existential fear. And that fear is what makes you see everything in the light of comparison, as a zero-sum game. That's why the closer Naruto gets to Sasuke, the further he feels from Itachi. Every win Naruto has feels like a loss to Sasuke. It's what gives their fight in the hospital context. Sasuke needs this fight to prove that he's still ahead, that he still matters, because what Naruto really does is bring Sasuke's darkest fear to the surface, the fear of not being good enough, of living in Itachi's shadow. He makes the cracks in that otherwise perfect image visible. But then again, it's like Naruto says, quote, "You and I, our roles could have been reversed. Remember, the entire village used to hate me, and I hated them right back. I wanted revenge. One bad move and I could have been like you. I used to think that I didn't have any bonds with anyone until I met you and Master Iruka. I always knew you were alone too, and I felt better knowing there was someone like you, like me out there. I tried to be your friend, be around you, so I would feel happy, but I never did, cause I was also jealous. You were good at everything. You were my rival, my goal. I had nothing, but I built bonds, and then in our missions as Team 7, I kept chasing after you. I wanted to be strong like you, cool like you. I'm happy I knew you." But let's not kid ourselves. Sometimes it's not about who is better, but about who is right. The Black King and the White Knight both want to change Britannia, but the way they want to achieve that goal couldn't be more different. Lelouch believes the world cannot be changed without destruction first. To him, the ends justify the means. No matter the sacrifice, as long as it helps create a better future, he is willing to go through with it. At least, that's what he tells himself. Suzaku, however, stands on the opposite side. He believes change has to come from within the system, that a victory achieved through dishonest means is no victory at all. But just like Lelouch, that belief hides something deeper, because Suzaku's morality isn't as pure as he wants it to seem, and Lelouch's justice isn't as selfless as he pretends it is. On the battlefield, Suzaku becomes the one variable Lelouch can't control, the flaw in an otherwise perfect strategy. He is living proof that Zero's miracles are built on real people dying, and in return, Zero becomes the standard Suzaku desperately tries to prove wrong. Because every time Lelouch succeeds, Suzaku is forced to confront the possibility that his ideals might not actually work, that morals alone cannot stop a tyrannical empire. And slowly, both masks begin to crack. Suzaku believes in doing the right thing in every moment, yet he lies to a childhood friend, tries to drug a prisoner, and sells out his best friend. He says he wants to change Britannia from within, but every meaningful step he takes only happens because Lelouch Lelouch sets the world in motion, piloting the Lancelot, becoming Euphemia's knight, his promotion to the Knight of Seven. All of it happens as a reaction to Zero. It's what strips away the White Knight, revealing the boy who murdered his own father to stop a war, making us realize that Suzaku's morality was never just about justice, it was a shield, a desperate attempt to give meaning to the blood already on his hands, that his heroism becomes an excuse for an easy way out of a world he is unable to change. But even his wish for a noble death gets denied from him. Lelouch suffers from the opposite problem. Geass is called the power of the king. It represents a person's deepest desires, a curse and a wish manifesting itself differently for each individual. And for Lelouch, it's imposing his will onto the world, a wish originating from a place of powerlessness. He believes so strongly in his vision of justice that he starts overriding the autonomy of everyone around him, no matter the sacrifice, no matter the cost. But is that really true? Because the moment that sacrifice becomes Suzaku, the moment killing his best friend, or at least using his Geass, becomes the logical move, he hesitates. And suddenly, the illusion cracks. His arrogance shatters the moment his perfect strategies stop being numbers on a chessboard. The accidental death of Shirley's father, the massacre of the people he claimed to protect, Euphemia. Their rivalry forces them to trade traumas. Suzaku forces Lelouch to confront the darkness of his rebellion, while Lelouch forces Suzaku to confront the hypocrisy of his own morality. They reveal the tragedy of one another. That's why their rivalry works so well, because they don't just oppose each other ideologically, they force each other to confront the contradictions within themselves. Suzaku slowly realizes that ideals alone will never change the world, and Lelouch realizes that once the means become monstrous enough, the end can no longer justify them. By the end of the series, their worldviews have almost completely inverted. Suzaku accepts that sometimes results matter more than ideals, and Lelouch accepts that somebody has to pay the price for the sins committed in the name of peace. They didn't just fight a war, they forced each other to stare into the abyss, and what their rivalry ultimately reveals is something deeply human. The illusion that we see the world objectively, that we alone stand on the side of truth, and Lelouch as well as Suzaku are no different. He states it himself,
Yes.
quote,
Emperor Charles sought the past, you seek the present, but I seek the future.
And from the abyss, they both come to realize peace isn't a system you can force onto people, like Damocles or Ragnarok, but an opportunity they have to create for themselves. The Zero Requiem becomes that final opportunity, their decision to stop forcing their individual truth onto the world, and instead let it become like glass, invisible and unnoticed, until the moment you shift your perspective and finally let the light that is happiness reflect. The catharsis of their tragedy arrives in their final exchange.
You will live on, always wearing that mask, serving as a knight for justice and truth.
This, Geass, I do solemnly accept.
Which is what brings me to the final dynamic. No fight for superiority, no clash of ideals, just what seems like an unbreakable bond. Killua is introduced as the prodigy of the Zoldyck family, a child raised to become the perfect assassin. But the moment he meets Gon, he is offered a different path of life, one he hasn't completely figured out yet. And Killua himself basically tells us, quote, I guess I'll stay with you until I find a goal. At first that sounds harmless, but in retrospect it's a warning, because Killua doesn't actually know who he is yet. All he becomes is Gon's best friend. His entire sense of self immediately starts revolving around him. The problem is that Killua's past never really leaves him. The torture, Illumi's conditioning, the needle constantly telling him to run from danger. All of it destroys his self-worth long before the story even begins. So while Gon sees Killua as his closest friend, Killua sees Gon as light he is lucky enough to stand beside. And subconsciously, he never fully escapes the mentality of being a tool. He just switches masters, from his family to his best friend. And what makes this dynamic even worse is that Gon never never becomes aware of it. If anything, Gon believes the opposite, because Killua originally tells him he's only staying around until he finds a purpose. Consequently, Gon doesn't want to hold him back or force him to stay by his side. He wants Killua beside him, but he doesn't want to chain him down. Paradoxically, Gon can't see the harm he is doing to Killua because he can't see the harm he is doing to himself. The pain that miscommunication creates between two individuals. Though Jing never explicitly demands it, Gon acts as if he must earn the right to meet his father, idolizing him to an almost divine status, a standard he still hasn't earned the right to stand beside. That's why he becomes obsessed with winning the right way, why he refuses to surrender, why he throws himself against opponents stronger than him, why he destroys himself trying to reach his goal. And in a twisted way, that's the exact same thing Killua feels toward Gon. That's why throughout the series, Killua constantly tries proving his usefulness. During the dodgeball match, he willingly destroys his own hands just to hold the ball steady for Gon, and even though Gon notices the pain, his obsession with achieving a perfect victory keeps pushing the situation further. Quote, "It has to be Killua," again, defines him through his utility. Both of them become so consumed by their own insecurities that they slowly stop understanding each other. Killua limits his value to protecting Gon, and Gon thinks he has to become worthy of his dream. Both end up tearing themselves apart in the process. Bisky in particular points this out, but it's already too late. She realizes that Killua's instincts are built around survival. He fights like an assassin instead of a hunter, running away, avoiding danger. One day, you will leave Gon to die. While she tries helping him overcome that weakness, Killua hears something completely different, that deep down, he is fundamentally unworthy of standing beside Gon, that he is a coward, and that fear completely consumes him, because Killua doesn't actually want strength for himself. He wants to become someone useful to Gon. That's why removing Illumi's needle becomes such a huge moment, not just because he overcomes his family's control, but because after what happened to Kai, he feels capable of protecting the person most important to him. Which is why the palace invasion hurts so much, because the moment Gon completely falls apart, Killua realizes there is nothing left for him to protect. The person he built his entire identity around is simply slipping away right in front of him, and for someone whose self-worth is tied to being needed, that feels like disappearing alongside him. And when Gon tells Killua earlier in the arc, "Let's go," Killua immediately hesitates, because in his head, he's pondering about whether that was meant as friends or as allies on a mission, and that doubt is what starts festering inside him. The fear that maybe he lost his access to the light. It finally reaches its peak when Gon tells him, quote, "Killua, stay out of this. This has nothing to do with you." Gon's selfishness, his black and white morality, his naivete doesn't only destroy himself, but the hearts of everyone around him. To Killua, those words cut deeper than any blade. Confirmation that he was never truly important, just useful enough. And it's also what poisons their final separation. Gon thinks he's setting Killua free after he's finally found a purpose, and Killua thinks Gon is already moving on. At one point, Gon starts saying, "If I stay here any longer," but Killua cuts him off before he can finish, because in Killua's eyes, it looks like Gon can't wait to finally meet Jing, like he doesn't want to keep him waiting, when what Gon meant in reality was that if he stayed here any longer, he could not endure their separation. And when Gon looks back one last time, saying, quote, "It's just like Kite said, no matter where we go, we'll always stay friends," it hurts all the more. Because what the English translation missed is that instead of using the kanji for friend, he uses the kanji for comrade, validating Killua's fear that he downgraded from Gon's best friend to just an ally. In a twisted way, Killua gets his answer to the question he never dared to ask, and it's also what cements his decision to leave. It's what makes their goodbye so tragic. Neither of them actually understands the other. Gon never realizes how much Killua's self-worth depended on him, and Killua never realizes that Gon wanted him to stay. But that tragedy is also what finally allows Killua to change, because in order to escape the cage his family built for him, he has to stop seeing himself through somebody else's light. What Alluka shows is that he realizes that he doesn't have to stand in Gon's shadow anymore, that he can create his own light. These aren't just 3 different rivalries, they are 3 different symptoms rooted in the same disease, because a rival is never actually the problem. They are just the first person cruel enough to show you what you've been hiding from yourself, the fears you don't want to face, the sins you bury under responsibility, the shadow you hide from. Because that's what a rival does at its deepest level. They don't just challenge, but kill you. Not literally, but literarily. The rival forces a transformation, a descent. The hero doesn't return from the journey the same. He can't, because the version of him that left isn't capable of carrying what he found, which is what Dark Link from The Legend of Zelda shows. More than just reflecting your attacks, he reveals the monster you refuse to show. There's an interesting passage in Twilight Princess's manga that shows just that. Even though I have always fought evil for your sakes, in order to protect you people who are so helpless and weak, I'm risking my life to help you, but you treat me like a nuisance the moment I become unable to fight? What in the world have I struggled for until now? You only draw near when it's convenient for you and you need help. I'm so weak. No one will pay attention to a hero who can't fight. My existence has no value. Link's shadow is the very pride and resentment he has been fighting against up until this point, holding true to Nietzsche's quote, "For whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become one. And if you gaze into the abyss gazes back. Because your shadow is the war your rival points at. And the way to defeat that which gazes back is to descend into it completely, and trust that what comes back up, while flawed and imperfect, is something that was always inside you.